So a few months ago I played Payday 2 for the first time, and I did actually enjoy playing that game, and you guys seem to like that video. So I thought I'd go back into the series, and the main reason why I did play that game first was just because it was widely known that that is the best game in the series. Just in general, and most people think it's the most complete game in the series. Whereas Payday 3 had an interesting launch, and a lot of people just saw it as unfinished. I mean, some people may prefer the gameplay, but just think there's so many features that were unnecessarily changed or removed for whatever reason. And that game released in September 2023, so it has been a while now, about a year and a half. And I think it's time to return to it, and it seems like a lot of other people are doing the same thing, because they have, funny enough, actually updated the game since then. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was on mostly negative reviews on Steam, and since then it has gone up to mixed, so that is an improvement. And just in general, people are coming back to the game. I have seen that the Steam live charts on how many people are playing, that has gone up since, based on the average daily players, as well as the game being on sale, a bunch of stuff, people are actually returning. So I thought it was the best time to do a review and just give my personal opinion on it. If we go into the stuff that people were concerned about when it did come out, based on the research, because I wasn't into Payday at the time, I didn't even know it released, to be honest. I just didn't look much into it, so I wasn't really too sure. And by the looks of it, it just seems like it was basic gameplay features that they did take out the game for some reason, that were fine in Payday 2 and people actually liked. And since then, they have done a lot of updates, and that again is another reason why I'm doing it. So I think it was an 18th month deal where they had a bunch of post-launch updates, and it was just extra development, which was definitely needed, and they have definitely improved it. It's not 100%, and I'll get into that. And a lot of them were done in the anniversary updates, so a year after the launch. So it saw the return of a server browser that was always in the game, people liked, made it a lot easier, and I think that was the same in Battlefield as well. And then there's the cross-platform voice chat and a text chat, I believe. A whole new UI which was different at launch and people didn't like. And of course, just general, a bunch of new gear that was added. There's also a bunch of new ways to gain XP rather than just the usual challenges they had. So there's definitely been improvements. Now, if I go into the gameplay and what it does feel like for people that don't know, in my opinion, I think the main thing I noticed when playing early on as well was the gunplay that just felt so much different to Payday 2. They've made a few tweaks, but it still isn't perfect. And the actual feeling of them, they just weren't hard hitting, they were pea shooters. I'm not saying the enemies were bullet sponges, it's just the actual feeling didn't feel like they were doing a lot of damage, even though they were. They just don't feel like they have any weight to them at all. But apparently it was even worse at launch, so I can't imagine what that felt like. But I still don't think it's 100% for sure, compared to Payday 2. And also in terms of the missions themselves and the actual core gameplay elements for the missions. So for example, a lot of the time you have to unlock a signal box or something, and the main process is you going on a bunch of different circles around the map and then just staying inside them, and that's the Wi-Fi signal, until you gain enough to actually unlock the blocked area. But it just seems so basic and so unimaginative. I mean, just a circle on the ground. I mean, Payday 2, for a 10-year-old game, it felt like there was way more complex stuff to it. Obviously nothing crazy, but it just felt like there was more thought put into it. And it just doesn't help the whole look of the game, where people were saying that they basically made the game for them and not the fan base, which is why people do play Payday 2, and I would, if I had to choose, definitely would play Payday 2, but that isn't the case for this video. I didn't want to make this video just to say you'd rather play Payday 2 instead, because I feel like a lot of people know that, but then Payday 2 players, they might want something new, and they might want to know if the game has been improved, which it has. And going back to the progress system, where it took a while to gain XP, by playing several hours of this game, I did level up and progress quite a bit. You know, nothing crazy, but it did feel like I was making some progress. Again, it's hard to sort of compare because I didn't play it at launch, but I think it was incredibly slow at launch because, again, there was just nothing to really gain XP. And people would have to play the game for hours and hours on end just to gain a few more guns and gear and stuff, which isn't great. People aren't, you know, they don't have the time to do that. They don't want to put so many hours into the game just to have fun. And then people also say that that makes them have to spend money, and the whole microtransaction part of it was a big feature as well, and they sort of want you to spend money on the game, which isn't great. And that's always been an issue, but I feel like at the end of the day, you know, going over all of this and the stuff they've changed and whatnot, what I've heard from a lot of people is that Payday 2, as I mentioned earlier, is a decade old. And you'd have to remember that Payday 2 isn't what it was like at launch. And the main takeaway from that review that I did was that people that played at the start, it's a totally different game now. They made so many updates on that game in those 10 years, it just feels like a totally different game. And that's why people love it now, and they did a lot of stuff to make it good. So when you do compare a year-old game that they're still, of course, updating, obviously not as much. That whole 18-month deal has ended now, I believe, so they've definitely slowed down, which is sort of why I wanted to make this video at the perfect time, where those 18 months are now over and a big chunk of the improvements have been made. Again, it's still only been a year and a half, so who knows what the game's going to be like in a year, 2 years time, like Payday 2 was. The thing about this whole entire series is that it's ever changing. The same with Rainbow Six Siege, that's a totally different game to what it was at launch. For some people it may be for the worse or for the better, but the takeaway is that you can't always judge it for what it is right now and then compare it to what it is in 5 years time. Moving back to my personal experience, I also want to talk about the performance of the game, and I couldn't help but notice some of the lag in the game, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and it isn't my, you know, system. So many online games similar to that are completely fine and they run smooth, and it wasn't anything, you know, game breaking, but there was a few odd lag spikes here and there, usually 1 or 2 per game depending on how long it is, because the games do go on for a long time. But that's also similar in all the games if you don't know the gameplay of this series, but I think people do, and it usually always happens when it becomes fast paced. So if you're trying to get away in a getaway vehicle and you're trying to move all the bags and stuff, that's when you want it to run smooth, and usually there's some, you know, frame drop or lag spike that gets in the way, which isn't great for a fast paced moment of the game. So that's something to think about. I mean, you could turn down the graphics, but I put it on, you know, the standard, nothing max, but just in the middle, and I shouldn't have to reduce it anymore. But again, that may not even affect it at all, it's just the servers, which I also want to talk about. And I didn't really have any problems getting into a game, I don't think. A lot of my experience was just the quick play games, that's a lot of the stuff I did. I didn't, you know, start my own matches or go into select ones, which I know you can do with the server browser, but a lot of my experience was just a quick play, which is totally fine, and it's something I did on Payday 2. And there's a bit of waiting, it's not instant, but you usually do get a full lobby and it's fine. You know, comment down below your whole experience on the game. And again, it also means that I didn't play with any of the AI systems, so I can't really speak on that. I mean, you sort of take it how it is, and it wasn't, you know, amazing in Payday 2. And the AI system is sort of difficult to do in these type of games. It's the same with Ready or Not, which wasn't too bad, but you know, like Ghost Recon for example, it's sort of average, to be honest, a lot of the time, which is why I tend to not sort of play with AI. It's also the case that I think they promised a lot of free content early on, and then they started sort of shoving down a bunch of paid heists to the game, which of course is gonna stir up a lot of stuff. But I just think, from what I thought beforehand, I genuinely thought this game was going to be awful. And it isn't a case of that, it's mainly just a lot of people are comparing it to Payday 2, and I could have said this at the start of the video, and I sort of did. You know, if you haven't played the second game, you would much rather just play that. It's definitely a more complete version, and again, it's 10 years worth of development in a way. Of course, it's not constant development, but a lot of content was added in that decade, and it will be the same probably with this game, and who knows where it will be in the future. But I definitely think for anyone that's just thinking of playing it and just has had enough of the second game, then you can definitely give it a go. I mean, I definitely had fun playing the game, and for anyone that just is a fan of that Payday gameplay system, and you know, just heist games in general, you know what you're gonna get. I just think people are really looking too much into the fact that they compare it to all the other games, and if you sort of take that mindset out, then you just have a decent game. It's nowhere near, you know, perfect or complete. There's definitely a bunch of stuff they could add and tweak, but it just depends on the player you are. You know, if you're going into the Payday series, I would just recommend 2. If you have hundreds of hours on the second game or even the first game, then you can definitely give Payday 3 a go now. It's definitely the best state it has been in, and hopefully it continues to get better. But that is my video on Payday 3 in 2025. Because these games are so sort of similar in their general concept and their gameplay design, I wasn't going to go too much into what the game offers, because I feel like I would be repeating myself. And I've done that a lot lot of the times where the games are so similar to each other, I don't really go too much into what the game is about necessarily, and mainly just what the differences are and my personal experience. And with a game like this where it's very, you know, controversial, I think that's the main thing people are looking for. So if you do want a more in-depth review on just Payday as a whole, then of course check out the Payday 2 video. I did put a poll out the other day talking about the whole style of videos on these reviews, so if you liked it more in-depth and informative long videos, then just let me know in the comments or look at that poll. It probably has ended by now, but you can always comment. Or if you like the more quick and sort of, you know, short and sweet videos, and you know, basing it off the poll, it's sort of hard to tell really. So I think I might just trial out both of them and just see what works best. And it just depends on the game itself really. As I mentioned just then, I think this video works best as the more sort of casual short review rather than the in-depth one. But it always does depend, so I basically will just do both and see what happens. But if you did enjoy this video, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy single player and also multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel does focus on. I have a bunch of playlists on a selection of games, so you can subscribe to the channel and check them out if you want to. If you'd like to support me any further, then you can become a member at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. And thank you all for the support and watching until the very end. And that was Payday 3 in 2025, and bye bye.